Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and I'm recording this live stream for YouTube on October 3rd, which is a Friday. And I want to welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be with you today. I wanted to talk today about paranormal encounters because for a few reasons. One is just reflecting on my own experience because I think I mentioned I've been guesting on a lot of podcasts, and it's made me very reflective about my own journey because I go into that a lot. That's kind of a standard um, part of an interview is like, what got you into your work? Tell us about your story. And so like I've said before, I would love for you to be checking out these interviews because one of the things is what comes out with each episode, with each different interview, because different interviews go in different directions. And so if you listen to these episodes, my hair, if you're watching the video, my hair is kind of crazy today. Um, but if you are um, listening to each episode, you will hear my origin story over and over again. You can fast forward through that because it's pretty much the same each time. But the real meat of the interviews draws out different timely bits of information and different perspectives. And so I've just loved seeing what gets woven with each interview, with each podcast guest, podcast host, and what it makes me reflect upon. And but one of the things is my origin story, and I know I've shared this with throughout time on my own podcast too, and in these lives, but one of the things that makes me think about is paranormal encounters and my own experiences with that. And here we are in at the beginning of October where things are starting, we've got the Halloween season that's kind of coming about, and there's All Hallows Eve at the end of this month. It's the Day of the Dead comes in about a month's time. And so there really is this sort of energy of the veil. And the other piece is we are in a very, very intense time right now. The solar flares, the geomagnetic storms, more than anything, they're just there. We've been getting hit by a lot of geomagnetic storms, which has been creating this very different energy. And it's a rough energy. I have to admit, it's a rough energy. A lot of people are really struggling. So if you find yourself in a hard place right now, please know that I know that feels very, very personal. But for the last few weeks, this has been par for the course. A lot of light workers are feeling like they're being tossed around. They're feeling adrift. They're feeling a lot of just they're feeling down and they're feeling pulled down. And so if you are experiencing that, I hope you can take comfort knowing that it's not just you. It is, and I was talking about this with somebody over text yesterday where it's like, I know it feels so personal because it manifests in our lives in a very personal way. Our thoughts are very personal. So we have this energy that's hitting us and it's making us feel off, and it starts to affect our thoughts and it starts to affect our emotions, and it feels like something's wrong with us. And I just want you to remember that you're not your thoughts. And a lot of what you can be tuning into, it can sound like you, it can feel like it's your thoughts, it can feel like it's you talking to you, but don't believe it. We've talked a lot in these live streams about Watiko, about mind viruses, about these inversions of truth that can show up in our reality, and they can twist things. They can really try to distort reality, and they can be very convincing. So if you're experiencing this, please know that it is going around. You're not alone, and you will get through it. You are a divine being. You are full of light and love, and you are here serving a beautiful, magnificent purpose. We're so lucky to have you here. And this is part of the the ride. This is part of the work, is that when you are a deeply feeling person and these energies are coming into the planet and they're unfamiliar and they start to they're trying to find resonance within you. And so they can kick things up that don't feel good. And there's nothing wrong with you. So please just breathe. Don't believe the thoughts. Remember who you really are. Spend some time in nature. Listen to some calming music, to watch what you're taking in terms of media, in terms of even like your entertainment. Don't try to avoid heavier things, horror movies or scary things. Try to immerse yourself in things that are going to uplift you, and pray. Remember that you have this whole team that is with you that you may not be seeing, but you have so much support to help you. So reach out, pray, and spend time with people who make you feel good, and just really nurture yourself. Take it moment by moment, breathe, and just know that this is it's a common thing to be going through right now. So that's just talking about the energies that are happening, that we're all a part of right now and that we're all getting hit with. But in terms of the paranormal, I mean, it does really fit into the paranormal because we just are in kind of an odd time, and it feels like the veils are thin. And that's part of that geomagnetic storm piece that has been happening. I like to subscribe to something called space weather, and you can get these notifications that come up, and I'm getting notification after notification, all of these geomagnetic storms, meaning that our magnetosphere around our planet is weakening. It's in a weakened point, which means that we're feeling more of things that are radiating from outside of this planet. And ultimately, I do believe that it is for our highest good. It is an opportunity for us, but there can be this adjustment period. But anyway, going back to the paranormal stuff. So I was just kind of reflecting on my own journey because I've not been the type of person that has really like been I haven't spent my life feeling that I'm seeing spirits or hearing spirits or anything like that. I had Julie Ryan as my latest guest on the last podcast that I released, and she talks about that too. She has learned how to develop her psychic skills. Now she explains herself as a buffet of consciousness or a buffet of psychic skills, but she trained herself and she didn't have these abilities really growing up, and I haven't really had ongoing psychic connections, but I was reflecting on my awakening and when things really went from kind of 0 to 100 in terms of my spiritual views, my understanding of the spiritual nature of reality. That was back in 2016, 17 sort of time. And one of the ways that manifested was that I had an obstruction in my sight, in my physical sight. I was seeing these rotating checkerboard patterns that like this, most of the time it was like this circular kind of, it was divided into quadrants, and it was a black and white kind of checkerboard, and I could never look directly at it. It was always in my peripheral vision, and it was rotating, and it had this like checkerboard kind of flickering quality. And this happened for weeks, maybe even a couple of months. And I even went to the hospital for it because I had a friend there who was who was an optometrist, and she wasn't practicing, but her husband still was. And he worked in a hospital, and they did a whole exam, and came up with this theory about a virus that I had had and that it was affecting my macula, but they weren't, they saw a little bit of something, but it never really added up. It was kind of we can't really see what's going on. The thing that I was relieved about was that I didn't have a brain tumor, because that's kind of where my mind went, where I was like, why am I seeing these things in my vision constantly? And I was familiar, had for many years, I'd had ocular migraines, which always began with, it was like a migraine that started with seeing something in your field of vision, and then it developed into a migraine as the day went on. So that was one, and I didn't know that that was happening in conjunction with this spiritual awakening that I was going through, because that started, I want to say that started in February. And the story of my awakening kind of began in the beginning of May. And that is when, all of the tragedies that I underwent that happened in a very short time started at the beginning of May. So as I was going through that, the rest of my life was pretty normal. I wasn't like seeking out spirituality. My life wasn't changing yet. So everything was kind of like normal except for what I was seeing in my mind's eye. And then looking back, I recognize, oh, I think maybe something was happening with my pineal gland in advance of my spiritual awakening. And the pineal gland is part of the endocrine system. It's a little gland in between the hemispheres of the brain, kind of deeper inside the brain, but between the eyes. And it is associated with third eye sight, and not just sight, but third eye connection, like spiritual connection. Of course, I knew none of that then. I didn't have any connection there between what was happening physically. I just thought this was a physical issue that I was having. So then, as I continued on, I had that series of tragedies, all that happened in a very short time, in 7 months. The issue with my eyes slowly went away. I think by the end of the summer, maybe I wasn't having those issues anymore. And I started meditating, I want to say at the beginning of 2017 was when I really started learning meditation. Maybe it was the end of 2016. I can't really remember. But I think it was like October 2016. Anyway, when I started my meditation practice and was getting diligent about meditating, I noticed that there were times throughout the day when I would see these orbs, particularly when I would leave my apartment to go pick up my kids in the afternoon from school. I would leave my apartment, walk through this area that had like a, what do you call that? Like a, I can't remember what you call it, but like an open area where there are walls around it. And then I would go out of this gate, and almost every time I would see all these spots, all these like blue indigo like spots in my vision, and they would fade. Wouldn't last for very long, but it happened over and over and over. And again, it was one of those things that I was thinking, what is happening? Is there something wrong with my sight? Is there something wrong with my eyes? you know? And looking back, so many things in hindsight start to make sense. But that was when I was developing this meditation practice, and when I was connecting, just starting to connect deeper with my soul. And so looking back, I think, well, it may have just been the quality of the light, and that there was something with that spot. And I had often just finished meditating before I would go and get the kids, that I think it was related to that third eye sight. And so it's interesting. I encourage you to maybe look back at some experiences if you feel like you don't have much physical connection with the other side, or many kind of manifestations of connection with the other side. I'd encourage you to go back and just let your memory kind of think back to when you first started to quote unquote wake up spiritually. And maybe there are some things that now that you have a bigger understanding of the psychic senses, the chakra system, how spirit communicates to us in very subtle ways, you may be able to kind of retrofit what you have started to understand with your experiences. Because I know for me personally, I didn't have as much of a willingness initially to see and accept things that were happening that were subtle as anything other than, something's wrong with my eyes, or my sight is changing to adjust to a brighter light, or whatever it was I was telling myself. But sometimes we might notice, wait, these are subtle ways. These could be subtle ways that we're perceiving the other side. And another thing that comes to mind, I would never in a million years call my house haunted that I'm living in right now. But I know that several years ago I was in my laundry room. My laundry room has no windows. It has no draft. I mean, there is an air vent in there, but it's far away from things. Like, there was no reason for this to happen, but I had an empty bottle of laundry detergent sitting on the sink in my laundry room, and I was folding clothes not very near that, and all of a sudden the bottle just started shaking, and then it stopped. And I'm thinking with my rational mind, like, what caused that? And by this time I was a few years into my awakening and my acceptance of psychic phenomenon and things. But again, I didn't really see myself as having those types of experiences. And there was really the most logical explanation for that was that something that I couldn't see moved that. And we do want to keep in mind that a lot of people who do have contact with the other side talk about that, all the empty space, and quantum physics talks about this, science talks about this. The empty space that we think is empty is actually full of energy. And that the other, a lot of people who work with the other side say they're not off somewhere else. When I was little, I used to think heaven was up in the clouds, and it was a different physical location. But many, many people say that they're right here. They're just in a different dimension. So they're amongst us. They're having their own experiences, but they're not off in some separate place. They're here. So sometimes we have these bleed throughs, and it's I just encourage you to open yourself up to having that interaction with the benevolent guides that are with you, who are guiding you, knowing and remembering that they're right there. You don't have to effort to be able to reach them. You just need to open yourself up. And so I hope that you will do that. I hope that you will remember every day to invite in your divine team, to invite in your higher self, to your lived experience, to welcome in their inspiration, their assistance, their protection, because they really are there with you. And they're probably doing little things in your environment, maybe even through your dreams, to connect with you. So just try to stay open and be creative. Allow yourself to open up into the creative ways that they may be able to connect with you. And just to reiterate, if you're feeling the energies right now and they're not fun, you're not alone. Hang in there, pray. You will make it through. Everything is temporary. Remember that everything is temporary. This too shall pass, and you will get stronger from it. So you are so, so very loved, so appreciated. Thank you for all that you're doing to to help usher in this next phase for humanity. I thank you for being with me here today. I bless you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.